Hey, my name is Jared Moon, and I'm part of a group of underground athletes you've probably never even heard of before. We don't rely on fancy equipment for training, and most of us don't even have gym memberships. In fact, our motivation comes from within. You see, we have jobs, families, and responsibilities, but we still have big goals, and they aren't getting achieved at a Globo gym. For that reason, we have to do things differently. Our training has to be smarter. We don't have every piece of equipment known to man or a ton of time to train, and we don't need it, because we are achieving amazing things without it. So how do we do it? If you ask your average personal trainer or gym goer, they'd call us crazy. Yet we're seeing results better than most every single day. And it's happening by blending mental training with physical training and becoming an athlete. What we call, and welcome to, Garage Gym Athlete.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Garage Gym Athlete podcast. Jared Moon here with Joe Courtney. What's up, Joe?
Hey.
Hey. All right, so today we are talking nutrition. Going to dive into a lot of different things. Joe and I were just kind of jokingly saying that we should just come up with a Garage Gym Athlete nutrition method because we kind of have a method down that we recommend to most everybody. So we're going to be talking about it and a lot of other things. But before we do, Joe's going to highlight some badassery for us.
So this past cycle, Jennifer Ross
I just almost fell down. We'll just keep going. Sorry, Jennifer Ross.
Hit a 10-pound back squat PR. So it was such an awesome thing that Jared just couldn't contain himself. Fell right over.
My microphone cable got wrapped around my foot. Anyway, all right. Jennifer
Jumping
Ross.
around. Mike Ryan hit a 40-pound back squat PR. That's pretty friggin' huge, 40 pounds.
40?
Yeah.
It's pretty incredible, man.
And then Chris Noble hit a 25-pound strict press PR, which is equally as huge because it's strict press.
Yeah, so I did a Facebook Live about this the other day and kind of people's expectation on PRs. And I feel like people they're not super happy when they get like a 5-pound PR on the strict press or something, or, and it baffles me because you have to look at your percentage gain, your percent increase. So I don't even, on a 25-pound strict press, like, I'm assuming that guy's in that 100s somewhere, probably not in the 200s, or where are we at? Did you know?
I don't have it down.
Yeah, but
I think it's like 165 or something like that.
Yeah, because not a lot of our athletes are 200 or above, so I'm guessing it's somewhere in the 100s. And a 25-pound PR, I mean, that's a significant percentage increase. That's huge. And then, a 30-pound deadlift PR compared to a 25-pound strict press PR, not even in the same boat if we're talking about a percentage increase. Unless your deadlift is 100 pounds, but that's
why I never use 2.5s on squats and deadlift, because I feel like a 5-pound fluctuation is like a 2%, 1%.
I feel the same way on squats and deadlifts. Like a PR is a PR because I think if you're getting to like a stalling point in the squat, like you're not, like I think you and I both over the years have like kind of roller coastered. Like, we'll focus on different things, so our squat will go down, it'll come back up, so on and so forth. But if you get kind of like to a really high level and it's been like a year and you can't break through it, bring me the 2.5s, and I'll PR my back squat then. But most of the time I'm in agreement with you. Is like, was I just feeling good that day, or was it really a personal record? But yeah. All right, man, let's talk about nutrition. I think we talk about it enough between each other. Ashley is on maternity leave. And so I really wish she could be joining us for the nutrition episode because she is our nutrition expert, nutrition coach here. But we'll be talking about it. Let's dive right in. So we're going to be going over kind of low-carb, keto-ness, just because we're doing that stuff. We'll be talking about fasting. We'll be talking about macros, talking about all that stuff. So where do you want to start, man?
Let's just get into some macros and fat.
Macros and fat. Okay. All right. Well, let me just briefly go over macros. So macronutrients are carbs, fat, protein, alcohol, and they all have a certain amount of calories per gram. Fat, 9 calories per gram. Carbs and protein, 4. Alcohol, 7 calories per gram. The only reason I bring alcohol up is because it's an actual differentiated macronutrient, but we don't really track them in our training. But if you're wondering, like, where calories come from,
for alcohol you set aside,
right?
Every day,
2% of your calories can come from alcohol. No, But sometimes people wonder, like, where calories come from in alcohol, because say it only has a couple grams of carbohydrate in it, right? You're like, how could this be high calorie? It's like, well, the alcohol itself has its own 7 calories per gram there, so that's where it gets excess calories. But yeah, so what we normally recommend, we have different macronutrient breakdowns in, per your goal, like where your 3 different macronutrients should be: carb, fat, and protein. Typically, we're recommending for most people a lower to moderate carbohydrate diet, moderate amount of protein. Generally, most people would say we're in the high fat category. I think most people consider high fat once you go over 35-40%, and that's pretty easy for us to do most of the time. So those are macronutrients we recommend. Like, if you want to really pour some gasoline on your fire, is to get on a macronutrient plan, track your macros on a daily basis. But I don't think it's sustainable forever because life is life. But I like to do like a 12-week macronutrient tracking for somebody, just to prove yourself you can do something for 3 months, like track your food. And then after that, you have a really good idea. I think it's a great lesson in food quantities. Like, Joe and I now are probably both pretty good at, like, you hand us a plate of food, we could estimate within a few, probably not grams, like with protein and stuff, you hand me like a steak with some potatoes and stuff, I could guesstimate pretty close to what I want or what I shouldn't eat, just because we've been tracking that stuff and looking at it for so long. But what did you want to discuss on fat?
Not to shy away from it.
Like,
I don't
not to
know.
be scared of fat?
Yeah.
Yeah, we've, how much fat do you consume? I mean, I don't know if you're tracking right now, but like, would you say you have a high fat diet?
Yeah, fairly. I mean, I got some fat in my coffee now. I cook with fat and eat bacon a lot. I make my own bone broth, have some of that, so there's some fat in there. Avocados, we eat avocados probably daily almost. Yeah.
Yeah, and we had,
Nuts. Ton
good,
of nuts.
Good fat, some carbs.
Not a lot of, and don't eat a lot of white colored food.
Yeah, and that's, fat in general, I think a lot of people shy away from it. And some fats you should. I've had probably 3 to 10 guests on the Better Humanology podcast talking about fats. Mainly the people talking about fats are in the low carb camp, because if you're low carbohydrate, you're going to have to be getting your calories from somewhere, and it can't be all protein because that's bad for you. So you really have to get into the fat game. But most people also aren't consuming enough protein. So let me just kind of give some of the breakdowns on macronutrients that we typically recommend. And this is how I'm recommending it these days. I used to just recommend like a straight percentage per, but everyone's so different, right? They weigh a different amount. They have different goals. I don't really do that anymore. And this is covered in our the accelerators in Garage Gym Athlete, which are brand new with this cycle, because I kind of talk about it. But what I recommend people do now is find out how many calories you need in a day, right? And then you can go to like macronutrientcalculator.com, find out how many calories you need in a day based off of your goal, whether you want to lose weight, gain weight, whatever. Calculate that, and I would actually use that website if you're wondering how to calculate it. That's the easiest way to easy button it without me getting into math and formulas. And then after that, the first thing you're going to do is set your protein. So, set your protein to anywhere. I typically recommend 0.7 grams per pound of body weight or per pound of lean body mass, which would be your body fat percentage minus your body weight. And then set your carbs and your protein or your fat. So just a quick example. If I want to do 1 gram per pound of body weight, just to keep things simple, I'm 185 pounds. And so I set it at my protein at 185 grams of protein. Now I can set realistically, I can look at my carbs and set, okay, I need this many carbs, this much fat, but I don't want to go above, say, 30% of my diet being carbohydrates. So say I now have my protein set, I set my carbohydrates at 30%, now I just have fat to play with, and it makes it really easy. So if any of that sounded complicated, you can literally do like play this episode while you're on macronutrientcalculator.com and just do exactly what I'm saying. Find your calories based off of your goal, set your protein. Don't let your carbs go over. If you're trying to do anything aesthetically, don't let them go over 30%. You can go lower if you're really trying to lose weight. If you're like a high-level athlete, you could bump it up to 35, 40, but I really don't ever recommend anything above that. And I'm talking about training hours per day, or multiple training sessions per day. And then you just play with your fat. And your fats have to be clean fats, not McDonald's or trans fat and, all these other things. Like there's not a lot of them, to be honest. You could do forms of coconut oil, coconut milk, avocado oil. What else you got, Joe? What are some other healthy fats for us?
The right kind of nuts, I guess. Almond. Well, you said almonds.
Yeah, nuts, especially if you don't care as much. I mean, some nuts do have carbohydrates if you're trying to watch that, but that's typically
ghee.
Yeah, ghee. Butter, grass-fed butter, and there are a lot of. That's about it. I mean, there's some other things that we could get into, but to be honest, there's not a lot of healthy fats. Mostly, it's like oils and.
You get in meats.
Yeah, and then in meat, but yeah, that's basically it. So that's how I normally run people through, and that's what we do in our accelerator program. But it's a little bit more detailed than that to give you like a really good walkthrough of how to do it.
So because of the different tracks we have, each track has different goals and just certain programming. Would you adjust or have recommended macros per the training, or more per the individual person and what they want or need, or kind of an accumulation?
Kind of both, because I really feel that just because I've seen it with each athlete, having coached so many, is that you can be on almost really, I mean, I won't say strength track as much because there's not as much conditioning, but you can really be on hard to kill or shred and adjust your macronutrients or your food and diet and lose or gain weight. Now, I do think it's going to be harder to gain muscle if you're right now, especially on the shred track. It's going to be a little bit harder. I mean, the hard to kill track, it's going to be a little bit harder to gain muscle just because of the type of conditioning and lifting that we're doing. You can get a lot stronger, but you're not going to be able to put on like 10 pounds of muscle mass. Shred, we're doing a little more hypertrophy. And if you have, a caloric surplus, you can. But in general, the shred track, most people is body composition wanting to lose weight or get shredded. So the main thing I tell people to do is set your carbohydrates at around 25% or less per day, and then do everything else I said about protein and fat. So if you set your protein, carbs at 25%, and then play with your fat, that's what your macronutrient profile should look like in shred. Now, carbs for hard to kill are a little bit higher, so if you're not as concerned and you're more performance-based, you can go from 25 up to, say, 35% grams carbohydrate, and then, after you've set your protein, and then play with the fat and see where that lands. And those are typically my recommendations. Strength track, really probably
even
similar.
Split.
Yeah, like it depends on what your real goal in the strength track is, and that's where I think it gets a little no one wants to get weaker on the strength track, right? So you should be at like a maintenance calorie load or a caloric surplus to gain strength. You can gain strength at a caloric deficit, but I don't know why you would try and stress your system that way to do that. So I would focus on basically the same recommendations, but you can bump up if you wanted to go to that, as Joe's saying, like the split, the 33, 33, 33. It's really great for just splitting all your macronutrients down. We'll call it the center, but splitting it in thirds. And that's a great approach to gain strength.
Yeah.
All right, now let's talk about the method, the real method that because we've done some webinars on this talking about like jacking with your insulin and fasting and all of that stuff. So I'll let you kind of walk people through basically the process you do right now, because I'm pretty sure it's basically similar to what we talked about in the webinar and what we're recommending a lot of athletes do with fasting, training, all that stuff. So you go ahead and walk people through kind of what you do, and I'll throw in like why we're doing it and if there are any things I need to add to what I think people should be doing.
Yeah, so when I wake up in the morning, I'm completely fasted, of course, because I'm waking up. I just drink black coffee and water for the first couple hours of the day. At around 10:30, 11 o'clock is when I start training. So I'm training completely fasted off of, 16, 17 hours or so. It's training from 11 to 12, 12:30 or whatever. It depends on some days I have protein shake right after my workout. Some days I have a smoothie or an RX bar or something. So about 12:30 is when I'm 12:30 is when I'm having my first bit of, carbs, protein, fats. Every once in a while, like once or twice a week, I will have MCT oil in my coffee. The very first thing, or actually, my very first cup, the first couple hours is still just black, and then at about 9, I might throw in some oil just to get at least 14 hours in of fast, and then I'll throw in some oil and eat as much as I can in between the day. And then at 6 o'clock, we eat dinner. At about 7, I usually get a post-dinner craving snack on of an RX bar or some nuts. And, 7:30 is the last time I eat.
Yeah, and that's basically what we're recommending for most people right now, because there's so many benefits almost in every single goal. Like if you have a weight loss goal, like you can gain weight or lose weight with intermittent fasting, but it just depends on how many calories and macros you're fitting into your eating window. So if you want to gain weight you need to do a caloric surplus in your eating window. So what it looks like, what Joe basically said, you have a 16-hour fasting window. If you stop at 7 p.m. and don't start eating till 11 a.m. that next day, you have 8 hours to eat all of your calories. And the optimal method is not the only way, because it doesn't work out with a lot of people's schedules, but Joe's doing it basically optimally, is to, if you could stop eating at 7 and then train at 10 a.m., finish around 11, you just trained fasted, which we've talked about on the Better Humanology podcast, has a ton of hormonal effects amongst other things. And then you have some food after that, with some carbohydrate in it, you're going to spike your insulin. And that's a good part of fasting, is you're not continually spiking your insulin. But when you do, you can look at insulin as like a funnel that gets like shoved into your muscles and in the cells. And so it's going to take, the protein and carbohydrates, glycogen, and just dump it into the muscles. And that's what you want post-workout. You want all the good stuff from your food to be injected into your cells after. And that's how you can look at insulin kind of operating at kind of at a base level without getting into it much more than that. If you guys really want to dive into that a lot more, we've had Dr. Ben Bickman on the Better Humanology podcast 2 times to talk basically about what I just covered, and he makes it sound way smarter and more complex than I just did, but that's the way I think of it. And so
what about...
Go ahead.
So what about those that need to train in the morning but also fast? We get a few athletes that are in that boat that want to do the intermittent fasting, but they have to wake up at 5:30, 6 o'clock to train.
Yeah, I would still recommend train fasted if you can. You can train stimulated. So if you want to, have some black coffee before your workout, if you can manage to fit that in before your workout. Some people have a problem with drinking something hot right before they train. Either they don't have the time or whatever, then make your coffee the night before, put it in the fridge, and you drink cold coffee in the morning. You drink it a lot faster. Iced coffee is a thing, right? People do that.
Oh yeah, I have a thing of cold brew in my fridge.
Yeah, there you go. But you're still get as much benefit as you can from some fasted training, and as long as a fast as you can. So if you could be done with dinner at like 6, then just stop eating until you train. Try and get as much of a fast. It doesn't have to be the strict 16 hours, 8, or it doesn't work. That's not how the human body works in general. So you're going to get some of the benefits from fasting. Get as much of it as you can. Now, I don't think that you should always train fasted. I think that you should monitor your performance, and that's what I've been doing over the last year. I'll share my data probably in a long article, but right now I have data for different energy system tests that I've done on completely just eating normally, eating a healthy, normal diet. Like I eat breakfast in the morning, I train, all that stuff. I have data on training only fasted and what my power output is and everything. And now I'm dabbling all the way into keto. Like what's going to happen to my performance. I don't think initial keto results are anything to look at. It's more once I'm actually more keto adapted. And so I'm going to have this like huge data pool to report on personally, N equals 1, experiment of what happens when you train in these different cases. Because I have found, just my initial like teaser is that I produce more power when I have carbohydrates, not fasted. Like, it's not a huge surprise, to be honest, but there are other things that are going into fasting though. Like I had a conversation about this with keto. So I am experimenting with keto right now. I don't know how long I will, but I'm going to experiment.
Day 0.
Yeah, I'm experimenting with it right now. I just started, and I'm going to do it for, I don't know, anywhere from 4 to 12 weeks. And the reason there's such a range is because I don't know how long it'll take me to actually piss ketones on the P-test strip, you know, like, and so I want to see how long all this takes, how I feel. There are a few things that can make me quit keto real fast, and that'd be aggressive weight loss, really. If I lose 15 pounds in the next 4 weeks, I'm done. Like, done. Like, I won't continue just because I don't want to weigh that little. I don't know if it's a vanity thing. I know that I won't be stronger if I lose 15 pounds. You know, I don't want to deal with that. So that's something that could make, if Jared's done with keto in 3 weeks, that's what happened. And
that actually brings up a kind of a good point about keto and such, is that you can't really turn keto on and off just like any kind of, you know, diet regimen. You're actually like a warming up period. You actually need to fall into a certain bracket. Just because you're going super low carb doesn't make you keto.
Right. And to be honest, my opinion on it is, if you are just to go really low carb but never actually get into keto, I think that you're just going to feel like shit. Like, that's my honest opinion, because if you never actually transition fully, then I think you're just going to feel bad. But I'll let people know more about my ketogenic experiment as time goes on. But yeah, I think I'll go keto, see what happens, and report back.
I'll let you be the guinea pig, because I don't know if I can do it.
Well, it does take so much discipline, because you can't cheat, like, period, or you'll be bumped out of ketosis. If I ever have more than 20 grams of carbohydrates in, you know, these first couple of weeks or whatever, then I'm ruining the experiment myself. And so, you know, you have to be really strict. And that's the only real reason I don't think keto is maybe for most people, is because there is the whole like metabolic flexibility. Another podcast we had with Zach Bitter, if you guys want to go on the Better Humanology podcast, because he cycles ultra endurance racing with going low carb and keto to a little bit more carbohydrates toward races and stuff. And I think that's really respectable and a really good idea for people to start looking more into metabolic flexibility. But I think just being one thing all the time is going to be, while I'm not going to say anything about the diets being effective or ineffective, I just think personally, we're always looking at the psychology side. Like, what can you actually do? Can you be keto your whole life? I don't think most people actually can, because you're going to want to do some things that bump you out, or maybe you just enjoy beer and don't want to give it up. You know, there's just certain things that like make it not possible, but being as healthy as you can. All right, so we kind of talked about the fasting, why to fast. Oh yeah, I was just going to mention, like, you know, I have all that data on my personal training. I don't think you should fast all the time, because you could have different performance metrics, but you have to kind of weigh the overall benefits. So like, say you're fasting, Joe, and you know that your back squat, so maybe your lifts are a little bit less, or maybe some of your conditioning metrics are a little bit less, and you just know that. You're like, you know what, I'm feeling a little bit off because I don't have any food in me. But cognitively, like, I work better, I perform better in the morning, you know, I feel better, I'm getting more cut, I have six pack. Like, if all of those things, if you have like a slight performance decrease, but you're getting all these health and additional benefits by fasting, then you kind of have to weigh which one's more important to you. It's like, well, I'm still pretty strong, but I'm also getting all this other stuff with fasting. It's like, well, do you just want to be stronger and forget all this stuff? You know, so you really have to balance, like, how much performance do you want to chase? That's how I kind of look at intermittent fasting.
Yeah, the only time in the last couple cycles that I've had anything before a workout was last cycle when we had the 40-minute AMRAPs. Because I think the very first week I hit a wall at like 20 or 25 minutes, and I was like, God, I got nothing left.
It happened to both of
dragging.
us. I remember that. Yeah. And this is the only time I think it's ever happened that I hit such like a sugar low or something. Like, my hand was shaking during the workout, and I could no longer keep pace, which is very unusual. Like I'm normally like pretty like strategic, very much like you. I'm like, and I was like, I can't. It wasn't even an intensity thing. I was just like, I can't. I hit a wall. I can't go anymore. And it was the same workout. I think you and I both hit it like, or the same week in one of those 40-minute AMRAPs. Mm-hmm. And that to me is not okay. I think I went inside and had like, because I was not trying to be keto at all at that point. I had like a shot of honey, like a tablespoon of honey, and then kind of bounced back. Still took a little bit, but that was definitely what happened. Is I was just like, I had nothing in the tank.
Yeah. So for those, I just started to have like an RX bar or a couple of sips, or just a little bit of like a smoothie, not even that much in my stomach, like a half an hour before, and then the next week another 40-minute AMRAP, good to go.
Well, that's what's also interesting is you need so much less than people think. Like this whole carb loading thing, like I'm going to eat like 6 servings of pasta before my marathon run. Like, like that's so bad. And it's true with almost any workout. Like it's very rare that you're going to be doing such an intense and long duration workout that your body's going to need all this ridiculous amount. And your body can't even like store it. Like, you know, I can't remember the exact amount, but your body can only store like, is it 2,000? I'm going to jack it up, but you can Google the facts out there. Something like 2,000 grams of, or maybe even less of carbohydrate to use, or less than that. And it's like, or 2,000 calories worth. And then it's like 70,000 calories worth of fat that your body can store. So your body's going to rely more on fat on those long-term events, and it'll burn out of carbs real fast. So the only way to actually use the carb cycle is to use carbs in a race. Like we talked about this in the Asheville Spartan thing. Like we needed carbohydrates during that race to get us through. And that's pretty normal, pretty typical. Even for people doing keto or metabolic flexibility, they typically fuel up a little bit. Like Zach Bitter, he fuels up in his races. He's not like fat's just going to carry you all the way through. So you really have to be flexible, but I think that covers it.
Yeah, I might have to try and go back to eating breakfast in the morning just to see what differences there are.
Yeah, it just depends on what you eat, because I would recommend just eating something that like could give you some sort of slight performance gain. You know, not like a pure fat breakfast, like some form of good carbohydrate mixed with fat and protein. Yeah, and that way you could test. But that workout like yesterday, the failure test.
10-second, yeah.
Did you fail, by the way?
No.
You didn't? Okay. I'm gonna do a Facebook Live about how to fail on that test. I failed really fast, but I need to talk to everyone about how to do that. I don't think I explained it well enough in the
It might have also been my bike, because the measurement it wasn't like an exact like to the meter. It's the only distance, like it was either going to be cals, which cows sometimes can vary, or not really vary, but
cows
like
are
the
hard.
measurement on it. And then the only distance that there was, it did distance in miles, so I had to go like 0.08 miles each time, and it's still like a wide. It's not like in meters where it would be off by 10-20 meters. So
yeah, and that's what I think. If you're struggling with finding a failure point in something like that, and I'll talk about this in the Facebook Live, is to switch to some sort of power media. Like bikes, you could track RPM, be a little bit more accurate. What kind of RPM can you hold during the entire time? And then also like watts. I think rower puts out watts, or bikes.
The bike has the watts as well.
Watts, yeah. And so there are different ways to track that stuff, and I'll talk about it. But yeah, nutrition wise, I was just gonna say that tests like that, like these 10 seconds on, 90 seconds off, 1 minute on, 4 minutes off, and seeing your consistency and where your performance kind of falls off are great to do in conjunction with nutrition testing to find out, like, okay, I had, 100 grams of sweet potatoes within 120 minutes before this workout. Boom, do it. Okay, I failed at the 10th round. Okay, I fasted for 20 hours, then I did this workout. Okay, I failed in the 3rd round. It becomes very apparent how your body responds to these different things when you're doing actually testing energy systems with nutrition, as opposed to just like, I think I feel good. You know,
Yeah, just doing a workout.
Yeah, I feel better totally. So yeah, that's my recommendation on nutrition stuff. Joe, you got anything else? Should we cover anything else nutrition wise?
No, I don't think so.
All right, cool. All right, until the next episode, peeps. Stay tuned.